Alright, I think Honkai Star Rail needs to start considering buffing their characters. Quick disclaimer, I recognize this isn't likely to happen as it's a Hoyoverse game, but I'd like to talk about it anyway just to get my thoughts out there. To give some quick backstory on myself for those that didn't watch my first video, I'm someone who's been playing gachas for a while. Before any Hoyoverse game, I played FGO and Arknights, and I still play FGO to this day. In both of those games, you can use pretty much any character you want in any content, apart from something they would have disadvantage in, like using someone with a sword against someone with a bow, or in HSR's case to be more relevant, using Jingwon against a lightning-resistant enemy. The way they do this is by letting you increase your character's strength in different ways, apart from just bringing a really powerful support that works with them. In Arknights, they have the module system to increase the power and versatility of different operators, usually through changing their passives in some way, and FGO has a variety of systems like increasing character levels beyond their base cap, increasing their base stats through items obtainable through events, as well as the topic of this video, directly buffing different aspects of the character kits through strengthening quests. For both of these games, if your character isn't amazing and the supports you're using don't cover enough of the gap between it and the super strong units, you basically just need to wait your turn and eventually they'll be usable again. In FGO's case specifically, this results in some of the lower rarity units being on par or sometimes even stronger than the highest rarity units. This lets everyone have their time in the limelight, or at least be usable enough to get close to it if you decide to invest enough in them. This is why low rarity clears for the hardest content in the game exists in FGO, and you can also do different challenges like only using a specific class of units or something like that to clear a stage in Arknights. This also means that when someone has already had their time in the limelight, they get yet another chance to come back into it. Something that gets parroted around the HSR community a lot is that if your character isn't strong, eventually there will be a support that helps them. Jingliu is the most prominent example of this, and that her teams haven't really changed since she released. What I don't think a lot of people realize is that any support that one character can use, so can the next. For example, if Bai Hang from the High Cloud Quintet somehow releases and she's best used with Jingliu as her signature support, then that basically means she's a hyper carry support, and the competitors to Jingliu that are filling that role would also be able to use her. In my opinion, this brings a new issue. Supports are a bit too universal in this game. If you want to do follow-ups, you use Robin. If your DPS is breaking, I hope you have Ron Mei. Are they a hyper carry? Then Sparkle, Bronya, and arguably Robin as well work. To a certain extent, this is good for the players in that if you get these universal supports that are giving extra turns or buffing your attack or increasing your break efficiency, then that means there are less characters you have to roll for because you've got someone essentially covering multiple DPS characters. On the other hand, it means that in their respective categories, competition for the DPS role becomes a single track. If one character has better numbers than another, then you're probably going to end up using the one with better numbers. Coming full circle, if we're playing a game where the supports are generally usable by everyone in their archetype, then that only leaves one avenue for character strength to increase, and that's by buffing them. Personally, I've always been a huge fan of FGO's way of letting you make your character stronger through increasing their level cap, as not only does it make that unit feel more special, because the items that do so can be rare, the levels also give raw stat boosts that can let someone who's behind on damage catch up, for example like a 4-star getting as much base attack as a 5-star. Yes, you could say that similar to the support scenario, this would be a universal buff, and there's nothing stopping someone from using it on the already broken characters. But I'd say I don't think that's necessarily a problem if the item to do that upgrading is rare. This would encourage people to use it on their favorites, not to mention these games are all about the characters. If you can make your favorite stronger, then I think that's a good thing. If someone else decides to use their rare material just to chase meta or whatever, I wouldn't say that's as good, but that's their personal choice and it doesn't really affect anyone else. Since a stat boost through levels is a more simple and also only partial answer to the problem, I think that quests to increase the strength of a character's kit would be good too. Imagine a world where Arlen's second trace got an extra passive to where when he resists a debuff he gets a damage boost or an attack boost of some kind. What if Yukong got a rework to her Roaring Bowstrings buff so that it only loses stacks on her turn instead of on ally turns? What if Jingwon's Lightning Lord activated at 10 stacks immediately rather than having to wait for its turn in the cycle? These older characters have fundamental design flaws or demerits in their kit that realistically just can't be fixed by having a strong support that works with them. I do want to specify here that I'm not asking for Hoyo to make these older characters the top of the meta, as that only feeds into power creep. As I said earlier, even if they're just close to the limelight, then I think that's good enough, because then at least they're playable rather than being a hindrance if you choose to use them. To use Yukong again as a quick example, since she's given for free, having her kit being more functional and easy to use would be a huge benefit for new players in the game. Another way that they could do it without directly changing pre-existing kits is by giving certain characters niches against enemy monster types. If Arlen had a damage increase against mechanical monsters, then you'd be more likely to use him whenever we fight something like that. I don't really mean to make this about power creep, in fact I have a whole other video on that, but it's definitely a concern, and hopefully in the future it's addressed so that people can once again use their favorites, or maybe use characters that they haven't yet due to their poorly designed kits. A lot of these characters in my opinion just need simple quality of life or small tweaks to their kit, and that would help them tremendously in being at least close to competitive with newer units that are being released, rather than being left behind. To be clear, once again, this is a Hoyoverse game. I know that realistically we're not ever going to get these changes, as they've made it their business model to sell characters rather than an experience. But I have to say, I think it's really unfortunate that unless they end up releasing alternate versions of characters like a universe-conquering Jingoan or something crazy like that, then eventually all of these older characters will fall off, including the ones we're using right now. In my opinion, at a certain point, Hoyoverse is going to fall under their own sword, because eventually there's just not going to be a character that's playable that someone may like, and that person may end up just leaving the game. I feel that when you make the characters the content, then you also have to have systems in place to support the use of those characters long term. In a game like Genshin, that's easy. Even if a character's bad in Abyss or whatever endgame content there is, you can still use them in the overworld, and more recently you can use them in the Imaginarium Theater, as that's tuned to be easier due to character requirements. For me personally, I'm still playing because there are still some characters that I like, even if my old ones aren't as good anymore. But those characters are becoming fewer and farther apart. Maybe someday I'll end up moving on myself from this game, but in the meantime, who knows? Maybe I'll end up getting something for the old favorites. Anyway, thanks for listening to my rant. Feel free to let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and if you haven't already, maybe give my other videos a shot too.